Folks, this morning on the Bobo, twitch.tv/AfterPrisonShow, come kick the Bobo with us Monday through Fridays. I was talking about forgetting about prison. In fact, I was trying to remember this guy's name. I couldn't remember this guy's name. I should have been able to remember this guy's name. And the fact of the matter is I've been out of prison now for a little bit over 3 years. And I'm starting to forget more and more about prison. There could very easily come a time sometime in the future where I have to make a video saying, I've got no more prison stories to tell. In fact, it's not that I don't have them, it's just I can't remember. And that's actually kind of scary to think about too. And it's not scary thinking about one day I'll probably be out of prison stories to tell. What's the scary thing is forgetting about prison. People have asked me from time to time, Joe, why do you constantly talk about prison? Why are you always reliving prison? And it's because you have to never forget. Because as soon as you forget, you can very easily find yourself in a situation where you're taking risks that you shouldn't be taking, doing things that you shouldn't be doing, and find yourself on your way back to prison. And that's real. Oftentimes, so many guys will get released from prison, and no sooner do they break that gate, get past that front gate, they're back out into the free world, they done forgot all about prison. They done forgot about their cellmate that they couldn't stand, them trays that were absolutely horrible, the way that staff treated them, treating them worse than animals inside of a cage. You forget. A lot of guys want to forget. They don't want to relive that. They don't want to think about that. But what happens when you forget about where you've been, a place that you never want to go back to? You run the risk of forgetting about doing everything in your power to make sure that you never go back there again. And it's with that being mentioned that I want to share with you guys a prison story about when old Joe was exactly like that. Hell, while I was in prison, I had already forgotten about prison. I wasn't thinking about it. And that was during the very first time that I ever went to prison, a time when I was sentenced to 18 months for my third probation violation. And by the time I actually got to prison after being transferred from the jail, I only had 6 months left to serve. A time that I considered like a cakewalk. Prison was nothing. A time when I remember vividly saying, if I'd have known prison was this sweet, I'd have been here a long time ago. And also a time while in prison, I was thinking about going right back out there and jumping right back into the same old BS that I had been doing up until that point, trying to get it the easy way, get that quick and easy money, be out there in the streets living that thug life, and not thinking at all to myself, like, if I haven't been able to be a successful drug dealer up until this point, I'm sitting in prison right now. What makes me think that I'm going to be able to go out there and do it this time? This time, though, when I get released, boy, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to be a successful drug dealer. Can anybody honestly think of any successful drug dealer? One that's never gotten in trouble, arrested, or killed? Please comment down below if you can think of anybody. Actually, don't do that because that might actually be snitching. So yeah, this prison story that I want to share with you is about a time when I forgot about prison while I was still in prison, and also a big reason. I don't want to place the blame on this individual, but there was a person that I met while I was serving this first prison sentence, who I would consider probably the coolest guy that I had ever met, a guy that I absolutely admired at this level 1 facility called Caroline County, a guy that I wanted to go home and be just like. And I can't remember this guy's first name, I can't remember his nickname, but I can't ever forget his last name, because his last name was actually named after a pickle, Clausen. And with me being an avid pickle lover, I love pickles. That did not say. Don't you ever say in prison that you love pickles, you like pickles, you eat pickles, you gobble the pickles. Don't ever say nothing about no pickles. Hey, y'all cooking a prison meal, y'all got some pickle in that? Could you put a little extra pickle in there for me? I love pickles. We are in prison. What you doing talking about you love some pickles? We in prison. You don't love no pickle in prison, you don't do that. This guy that I absolutely admired, this guy that I considered the coolest dude I had ever met in prison, I was young, I was like early 20s, I can't remember how old I was. His last name was Clausen. And there was a reason why I admired this dude so much. And it was because I legitimately felt like I was in that movie Blow with George Young and Diego. You know that scene where they're sitting there in the prison? Diego's on the top bunk, George is on the bottom bunk, and Diego's telling him, Joe, you had the wrong dream. Your dream is wrong, Joe. You're dreaming wrong. Joe, stop dreaming about the pickle. Joe, it's not about... Yeah, when I met this dude, Clausen, I sort of felt like I was in that movie Blow. And by the way, shout out to Touching 2 Times Tommy for that little reenactment. Clausen was a guy who would change my life in prison forever, no homo. And that's because when I met this dude, I found out what he was locked up for, and what he was locked up for was exactly what my little young dumbass wanted to go home and do. I wanted to be just like Pickle Boy. Wait, that's actually a real... I wanted to be just like Clausen. This guy Clausen was about my age, from a rich area of Virginia called Fairfax. And the only thing that I know about Fairfax is they've got a Ferrari dealership. There's a rumor that a Ferrari dealership is there. This is one of the most luxurious and expensive areas to live in the entire United States. So I used to oftentimes joke with Clausen about him being from Fairfax, saying, boy, you from Ferrari land. What you doing in prison? You like from Beverly Hills, you Laguna Beach, up Dawson Creek, up. You ain't supposed to be in prison. But again, he would tell me why he was there, and this would change my dreams for when I got released completely. Clausen was locked up for manufacturing the devil's lettuce, for manufacturing the marijuana. And we're not just talking about any old Reggie weed. We're talking about some high quality, high strando good stuff. Some very expensive stuff at that. In fact, Clausen would tell me that he was doing so well with this grow operation that he had, 50 to 70 plants a month or 50 to 70 plants a cycle, I can't remember. He told me all about clones, high pressure sodium light bulbs, carbon scrubbers. This dude was legit. And he also told me that he was making $20,000 a month. $20,000 a month. Back then to young Joe, young little all up in the street, little Jolly Rancher 69 Joe. Thug life for life. Boy, I live that thug life. You might as well told me you was getting $1 billion out there in the street. Clausen, you was making $20,000 a month. I know you had a Ferrari. Joe, there was no Ferraris in the store. I don't know what you want me to tell you. I was driving a Mazda Miata. There was no Ferrari. I'm sorry, it was a Mazda. Not a Lamborghini, not a Ferrari, not a Tesla model. It was a Mazda Miata. A Miata. You got to imagine I was young. I had been trying to get it right in the thug life, street lifestyle up until this point. Multiple different times that I was in and out of jail. This was my first time going to prison. And one thing that I knew, I was green. I was a fish. I was fresh meat going into this prison. Didn't really have nothing to worry about. I was at this level 1 facility. This place was a cakewalk. But one thing that I had always known, I had seen the movie Blow, for God's sake, it was one of my favorites, was I knew that prison was like college for criminals. You go in with a bachelor's in breaking and entering, and you come out with a master's in manufacturing. I was completely fascinated with everything this dude Clausen said out of his mouth. I legitimately wanted to be his prison BFF. I wanted to be the guy's best friend in prison. That's what I did. Anytime that I was cooking, hey, Clausen was good, man. Hey, you trying to cook with me? I got the pickles. I got them prison pickles in this one. You ain't even got to bring nothing. Let me feed you, Clausen. Come kick it with Joe, man. Let's kick the Bobo. Let's tell some war stories, Clausen, boy. You my dude, Clausen. You was getting all that. I knew you had a Ferrari. Hey, thank you, Joe. I'm good. I don't even like pickles. It's ironic, I know, but I'm not a fan of the pickles. It's just my last name. Yeah, the guy is very weird. I think he has some daddy issues. Sometimes when I go into the shower, he follows me and he's looking at the Manzilla, the Mikanda. I don't honestly know. I don't honestly like him either. I kind of want to poke him up a few times. As dramatic as I'm making this, Clausen actually did like me. He did. I might have been a try-hard, a hanger-on. I wasn't holding on to his pocket. But I admired the guy. This guy lived a fascinating life. He was getting money. He was successful. Granted, he was locked up with me, so he couldn't have been all that successful. But $20,000 a month just for growing this stuff. I had to find out how to do this. I wanted to learn as much as I could. And when I went home, forget prison, I'm gonna be just like Dill Pickle Boy. And with the fact that me and Clausen would kick it from time to time, he would tell me crazy war stories. Stories that had me on the edge of my seat. Y'all think I tell some stories? The way this man would tell me these stories of his life out there in the free world, this dude belonged in Hollywood. I remember one time he told me, he said, Joe, there was this one time, when we started the grow operation, we did it outside. It wasn't a good idea. You had to deal with the elements, the weather, it wasn't a good fit. But back in the very early days when we first began, we started outside. 50 to 70 plants a cycle, 20,000 bandos a month. We was making there was no Ferraris, Joe, no Ferraris. But what changed everything? It changed everything. It happened one day. I was watching the TV, the weather was on. It said it was going to rain. I told my business partner, my associate, look, it's going to rain. We've got to protect the crop. We've got to protect the crop, business associate and partner. We've got to go do something. But my partner and associate, he said, it's going to be okay. It's going to be a light drizzle. You know that light drizzle came that evening. That evening the rain came, Joe. It was like a monsoon, a tsunami, a typhoon. It was bad. Bad, Joe. And you see, back in the early days, $20,000 a month, it did not buy us the Ferraris. It bought us the four-wheelers. We would take the four-wheelers out into the woods to check the crop. And this night, as the rain came and the monsoon, the typhoon, the hurricanes, the gale force winds was coming, Joe, I was on my Honda 400 EX. Ding, 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 ding. To check the crop, Joe, I had to ride the four-wheeler out into the rain. And when I got to the crop, Joe, the most horrific thing. You could never imagine. This was terrible, Joe. This was terrible. The crop was down. The rain had completely wiped out the crop. It was like a tsunami had come through. It was over, Joe. The $20,000 a month, it was finito. Done. Gone. That month, it was a washout. From that moment, I told my associate, my business partner, ding, 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 ding. No longer outside, associate in business, but no longer outside. We're taking the operation, the grow operation, the manufacturing indoors. He was an impressive storyteller, and his life was absolutely amazing. This guy was like Tom Cruise from Mission Impossible, minus the fact that we've got Touch Him 2 times Tommy portraying him in this video. He was like the most interesting man in the world. To me, he was. And I wanted to be just like him. But you know, with things being so good for this guy, I mean, it would only be a matter of time before something would happen, before he would slip up, and he would end up being locked up with me, where I would be just absolutely fangirling over this dude in prison almost every single, wow. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw this out here. I am not a convict, okay? I am an inmate. I'm gonna go ahead and clarify, right? I'm an inmate, okay? I was fangirling over another man in prison. It is what it is. The man was amazing, and he was somewhat of a success, the most successful person in the illegitimate, illegal, street life, thug life, lifestyle that I had met thus far. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. I probably already said it 20 times. I wanted to be just like him. But eventually a mistake would be made. He would take this grow operation inside. This is what he told me. He said, and everything was all fine and dandy until. Joe, look, I'm not perfect. I made $20,000 a month, no Ferraris, but we had the four-wheelers. Ding, ding, ding. We had the four-wheelers and the Mazda Miatas. I mean, it was a decent life. But eventually it would all come to an end. It would all come crashing down around the big old boy. It would all come crashing down. You see, this one day, I'll never forget this for as long as I live. I was asleep, Joe. I was asleep. And the police, they came, boom! Search warrant to you in your house. We are going to find the operation. It was all over right then. I was asleep. I get woken up to the front door, getting kicked off of the hinges, Joe. I would later find out that it was behind a guy who had bought a single blunt. We're talking about $10 to $15, maybe $20 worth of the devil's lettuce from one guy. From one guy, Joe. Just took one guy, who in turn was getting the devil's lettuce from me, Clausen. The domino effect happened, they told it all, and the police, they were at my door. Boom! Police search warrant! It all came crashing down. But we were very sophisticated, Joe. Once we took the operation to the indoors, we became very highly sophisticated, and we almost got away. The police came into the house, many of the police, guns everywhere, vast tactical units. They could not find the operation. It was indoors. Indoors, Joe. But it was like Scooby-Doo. I grew up watching the cartoon Scooby-Doo, Daphne. I can't remember the other characters, but they always say at the end when they catch the bad guy, if it wasn't for the pesky dog, the dog! Joe, they brought the dogs. They searched the entire house. They could not find the operation. My business associate and partner, he was there as well. They could not find it. They said, where is the devil's lettuce? Where is the manufacturing that's taking place indoors? They couldn't find it. Until they went down into the basement and the dog, the pesky dog, Joe, it began to barking at the wall. As soon as the dog began to barking at the wall, Scooby-Doo is sitting at the wall. He's sitting down. He's sitting down. He has gotten a hit. I believe that's what they call it in the canine terminology. The dog sits down, barking at a wall, a blank wall. It was a false wall. They got behind the wall. They found the operation. My business associate, it was crazy. And now I'm locked up in prison with you fangirling, girl fanning, whatever you call it all over me. Would you stop drooling, Joe? The shit I do just to tell you all these stories. I mean, I really just be throwing myself completely under the bus. But the point of all of this is, with as fascinated with this dude, as intrigued, as fangirling over another man in prison as I was doing. You know, had I been any smarter and not so blinded by just how cool I thought this guy actually was, I would have realized that even this guy that I thought was like the man, even he fell. So if he could not fully succeed, what made me think that I was going to go home and do any better? Well, to tell you the truth, I most certainly wasn't thinking about none of that. I wanted to take his dream, combined it with my dream, and I was going to go home and be successful doing exactly what he was doing. In prison, completely had already forgotten about prison. Now what I'm doing, after fangirling over this dude and hearing all of these amazing stories that I'm just hanging on the edge of my seat to listening to, I began to devise my 5-year plan. And you know what's interesting about that is back then, re-entry rehabilitation wasn't even a part of the picture. But now it is. And a big part of that re-entry and rehabilitation is they want prisoners devising their 5-year plan. Where do you see yourself in 5 years after you get released? 5 years? 5 years? I'm just trying to make it the first week. I'm just trying to find a job, and a job that's going to be able to pay my bills. 5 years from now, I can't think that far ahead. I hope I'm not back in prison. That's where I see myself hopeful. But back then, I was devising a 5-year plan, and that plan was I was going to go home, be just like Pickle Boy, a.k.a. Clausen, and I was going to make, I don't know, maybe $50,000, maybe $100,000. I might make that in a year. I don't know where and how. I was thinking that this was going to be any type of realistic. You know, I know that people have made that type of money in the drug game. I most certainly never did. I didn't make hardly enough money to be able to support myself out there. And what I would do is whatever little bit of money I was making, we're talking maybe $100, $200, at the most $300. I'm out there flexing in the bars like I really got it like that. Man, you know who I am? I'm Joe Escobar in this place. All drinks on me. Wait, how many people in here? Yeah, just as quickly as I would make any money, I would be spending that trying to portray myself as something that I definitely wasn't. But my 5-year plan consisted of getting out, becoming exactly like Clausen, making $50,000 to $100,000, buying a Ferrari, and then starting a tree removal service. We're gonna need a cherry picker, one of them trucks with the little buckets on the top, couple of chains. I don't even know how to cut down a tree. Needless to say, I would end up getting released early 2008. This would be in February. I believe it was the end of February, probably like February 22nd. I would get released February 22nd of 2008. And I would go out there, and as soon as I walked through that front gate, prison was in the rear view and was forgotten. Clausen was the only thing that I was thinking about. Maybe I was kind of like having like an obsession. That's not a good. And you know, with me attempting to be just like this guy, attempting to get it the easy way, still continuing to try to do the same old things that I had been doing, that definitely hadn't worked up until this point and had only led me to use jail and prison as a revolving door, I would last less than 1 year out there. Surprising I would last that long at all. I got released on February 22nd, 2008. And 10 months later, on December 21st, 2008, my dumb ass was locked up again because I had forgotten all about prison being a place that I should have thought better of back the first time, thinking the first time that this place was so sweet. Oh, this ain't nothing. I should have been here a long time ago. Well, that I was actually going to put into action because I was on my way right back, facing all sorts of drug charges to serve my second and my last prison sentence, 7.5 years. When you serve time, sometimes it's going to be easy. Other times, not so much. My first time was a cakewalk. My second time was like hell on earth. But no matter how the time is that you serve, you got to know that prison, jail, it ain't no place that you ever want to go or go back to. And in an effort for me personally to ensure that I never go back, and I hope that some of you will take heed to this as well, one very good way that you can help to give yourself a better chance of never going back is to never forget where you've been. As cliche as that sounds, prison is some place that you never want to go, no matter how sweet it is. Because even if it is like super sweet, there's still all sorts of stuff that you're going to miss. People are going to pass away. Your family ties are probably going to suffer quite a bit during that. You're going to lose your girl. Jody's going to take over the house. Relationships with your kids. You'll miss out on key moments in their life for sure. Always keep in mind why prison is a place that you never want to go to or never want to go back to. Start with that. and then do everything that you have to do in your power the legit, legal way to ensure that you stay the course. Hey, look, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a like and a comment letting me know exactly what you thought about it. As always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted, nor ever forget about where you've been, what you've been through, and make the most of every day. Peace!
Joe, you had the wrong dream. Your dream is wrong, Joe. You're dreaming wrong. Joe, stop dreaming about the pickle. Joe, it's not about... Joe, you had the wrong dream.